Welcome back to the Poker Vlog. This is episode number 212. For this one, we're in Las Vegas, playing at Bellagio. We're playing 510. But before we get started, a few announcements to make. The first one is that actually it's pretty much only one. We're doing a Hustler Meetup game June 4th and 5th in Los Angeles. So more information in the description box below. Hopefully Andrew and I will see you out there. All right, let's go ahead and get started.
We're getting after it today on the Strip in Las Vegas. After playing multiple wild sessions and uncapped games in Texas that actually went our way, we're coming into the session at Bellagio feeling good and with momentum completely on our side. Poker's much easier when that's the case and when we're thinking clearly. It's a nice Monday afternoon. There are 3 5-10 games going and a seat open for us in the must move. I buy in for $1,500, that's the max. Once we get to the table, we're ready to start firing away. The session begins at 12:24 p.m. 20 minutes in, we've got ace-queen suited in the small blind. The cutoff has a hand that he wants to go to battle with. He raises to 30. We're likely best. We don't want to call and play this out of position against one or potentially two players if the big blind wants to call for only 20 more. Instead, we 3-bet to 120. If we were in position, we'd only have to make it about 3 times the initial raise. Since we're playing from the small blind, we try to disincentivize a call by increasing the amount to 4 times the initial raise size. The only issue is the big blind. He has 670 and doesn't want to go with our plan.
All in.
The big blind has gone rogue with his cold 4-bet shove for 550 on top. The cutoff tank folds. Do we really want to get it in for 670 with ace-queen? That's almost 70 big blinds. I mean, we probably do. It's 55 big blinds more. It's also way more fun for the vlog if we call. This isn't a spot that comes up all that often, so I'm not 100% sure what to do. My inclination is to avoid the situation, eat a small loss, and move on. Feels like we're up against either ace-king or jiggities. We're not getting a super great price. A lot of the time I call. Today, we fold and try to play a little more disciplined than in the past. I just don't see cold 4-bet shoves as bluffs that often in these games. Saving money is just as important as winning it, although in this case, we never get confirmation that it was the correct laydown. 6 minutes later, we pick up king-queen suited in the big blind. Our boy, who just ripped it on us, limps in from under the gun. He's not the only one with that strategy. Cutoff, button, and small blind all call as well. I'm on the fence about whether to check in order to see a free flop and try to connect, or whether to raise big and try to get this down to heads up, or perhaps win without seeing a flop. I go with option number 2 and raise to 70. I really don't want the under the gun player to jam on us again. Limping under the gun with aces is something that I see a lot from recreational players who think they're sneaky. Instead, under the gun calls, the remaining players fold, we at least get it down to heads up like we hoped, but we're out of position. The flop comes ace-7-3 with 2 hearts. We don't connect except we have some backdoor draws. An ace-high flop could theoretically be okay for us as the pre-flop aggressor though. We take a stab for 100. It doesn't take too long before the opponent folds. Maybe he had small suited connectors or a small pocket pair. We at least get some of the money back that we lost to him when we 3-bet in the previous hand. The claw picks us up, then places us at the second must-move table where we look down at 6-5 suited in the cutoff. This one's playable from this position. We raise to 30. It's fun when you flop a big hand with 6-5 like a straight, trips, or 2-pair because people don't expect the pre-flop raiser to connect with low boards as much. The button, small blind, and big blind all call. We're going 4 ways to the flop. The dealer puts out king 8-7 with 2 spades and a club. We've got an open-ended straight draw and a backdoor flush draw. It checks to us. We've got a hand that we really want to see another card with. It's also tough to get a bet through 3 opponents. I don't mind betting as a semi-bluff occasionally. This time I check in an attempt to follow Victor Frankenstein's footsteps and make a monster. The button luckily also checks. We've got a shot. The turn is the 7 of clubs, pairing the board, but giving us an open-ended straight flush draw. The small blind won't allow anyone to see any more free cards. He bets 60. The big blind folds. I'm considering raising to 200. Again, I don't want to get blown off a hand with a lot of potential. I flat to avoid getting check raised on what's become a paired board. The button folds, it's down to heads up. Unfortunately, the river is a 3rd 7. Our hand had a ton of potential, but just like Ashley Simpson, it ends up being a big disappointment. The small blind bets 80. There's nothing we can do to save this hand. We have to cut it off. From the cutoff, we fold. The small blind couldn't have had anything worse than we had since we were playing the board. It still hurts to brick it. 3 minutes go by, then we pick up ace-queen offsuit in the big blind. Under the gun calls 10 with a short stack. The cutoff is the most talented opponent at the table. He's a European pro who raises to 40 in order to isolate the limper. He's not going to accomplish his goal. The small blind calls. I don't want to call to 40, then have the under the gun player call and play 4 ways. We 3-bet to 200 to get some redemption with ace-queen. There isn't any resistance. The opponents all fold. We win 90 without seeing a flop. Still, we're stuck a small amount on the day. Next we've got king 7 suited in the small blind, under the gun limps in, the button calls, we're getting a discount, we call 5 more with a playable hand. The big blind checks, I don't know what's in the water today, but there's a ton more limping than usual. That's a sign of a good game. We're going 4 ways to the flop, it comes king 9 deuce rainbow. We've got top pair and a backdoor diamond draw. I could bet or check since no one raised pre-flop. I check, the remaining opponents all check behind me as well. The turn is the jack of diamonds, we pick up a flush draw to go with our pair. We can't have this checking through again. We bet 30 for value. The big blind folds, under the gun isn't ready to give up yet. He calls. I have no idea what to put him on, it's probably worse than what we've got. The button folds, we're heads up. The river is the 6 of spades, we missed another flush draw but our top pair is likely good. There's certainly no reason to think that it wouldn't be. If we're ahead, it's tough for a worse hand to call our bet, unless we make it small enough so that hands like second or third pair feel like they're getting a fair price. I bet 50 so that the opponent can call with something like queen jack or jack 10 if that's what he's got. No call this time, under the gun, raises to 130. I'm perplexed as I attempt to piece together the story that the opponent is trying to tell us. I revert back to memories of the million or so times that I've been raised small on the river, called, and then was shown superior hands like David Duchovny's and Zoolander. They're not going to get us today. We're trying to play as solid as possible without giving anyone an extra dime if we don't have to.
Alright, dude, my sim.
It's a bit frustrating never knowing whether or not the fold is correct, but I feel okay about this one. We add on for 300 more and are in for 1800 total when we pick up pocket 3s in the big blind. Under the gun limps in with a short stack. The hijack is the same European dude who ISO'd the limper when we had ace queen offsuit and 3-bet earlier. The hijack raises to 40 again. The cutoff calls. We've got a hand that we'd like to see a flop with. We call for 30 more. The under the gun player calls. We're going 4 ways to the flop. It's 5-4 deuce with 2 diamonds. We don't make a set. Still, we're in decent shape with an open-ended straight draw. I check. No one wants to fire. The opponents all check as well. The turn is the 3 of clubs giving us a set, but now they're afforded the straight out there. I check. Under the gun bets 30. This isn't a real sizing. He manages to get the hijack to fold. Apparently he didn't have an ace. The cutoff calls. We're probably beat at the moment, but we're getting a good price to full house mine. We call, hoping for the board to pair. If it doesn't, we'll check fold because one or both of our opponents is probably going to have a straight a huge percentage of the time, particularly if there's another bet. The river is what can only be described as a miracle deuce. We make a boat so small that only a baby could drive it. We check to set the trap. The under the gun player falls for it, betting 100. It's at least possible that he limp called or raised pre-flop with something like pocket 4s or 5s and has actually outboated us. I still think it's way more likely that he has an ace or 6 and is destined to give us his whole stack, which only consists of 220 more future Bradley dollars. What's better is that the cutoff calls the $100 bet. There's almost no chance that he has us beat. He'll just have an ace or 6 fairly often. I raised to 500. This more than covers the under the gun opponent. The cutoff has enough to call the amount in full. Under the gun calls and is all in for less. The cutoff isn't snap folding. He mulls it over for a while, then finally folds. We turn over the boat. Then there's a little confusion. The opponent tables pocket 6s. He seems like he's newer to the game and either didn't process that I had a full house, or perhaps had forgotten that a full house beats a straight. The way he played the river is pretty reasonable regardless. We get an extremely fortunate run out to cooler the opponent and win a nice pot that finally gets us above the even mark for the day. Our stack climbs to 2100, so we're up 300. Here we have ace 9 offsuit on the button. Under the gun +1 limps in for 10. He didn't start the hand with many chips. A player in middle position calls to see a flop for cheap. The hijack also calls. Our hand isn't spectacular, but we raise to 60 in order to punish the limpers. We have decent card removal, making it less likely that under the gun +1 has aces. I doubt anyone who limps behind him will have a strong hand. Aces could still be what we're up against because under the gun +1 puts in the limp 3-bet jam for 215 total. Very annoying. The middle position player and the hijack both fold. It's not that much more. I'm getting 2-1 on a call. If either of my cards are live, then I won't be in very bad shape. I gather chips, 0.2 of a second before putting them in. I remind myself that I'm trying to play more discipline. I fold. If I were suited, I'd probably call for the additional 155. It's just hard for the opponent to be bluffing for a small amount more. No real need for us to take the risk. Often, people in the comment section want to see more pre-flop action and more folds. Well, I'm showing them to you today. In this one, we've got queen 10 suited in the big blind. Cutoff limps in. I'm actually shocked at how much limping we're seeing today. Don't open limp. I'm telling you right now, it's a bad strategy in cash games unless you're in the small blind. The button raises to 40. We defend for 30 more. The cutoff folds. It's heads up and we're out of position. The flop comes king 10-3 with 2 spades and a club. We've got middle pair and a backdoor straight draw. I check, there's no check back. The button bets 60. I'm not too thrilled to see it bet. If there was a diamond on the board, I'd feel much better about calling in this situation, so we'd at least have a backup plan and a lot more cards that could help us out on the turn. We'd still be best if we're up against some type of drawing hand. There just won't be many cards that we're happy to see come out on future streets. It's too soon to fold though. We call, the turn is the 8 of diamonds, not a bad card if we were ahead on the flop. We check, the button checks back. Maybe he's giving up on a hand like ace-jack unless he hits an ace or a queen for the straight. The river is another 8, checking to induce a bluff makes sense. If we were up against a king of some sort that was only checking back for pot control on the turn, maybe it's best to put out a blocker bet to name our price, then fold to a potential raise. We bet 90. There's a chance we could be up against 9-8 of clubs or 9-8 of spades that just improved the trips. That doesn't appear to be the case. The button folds. We were kind of in a dicey situation on the flop. It's great that we didn't face progressively larger bets on the turn and river because I'm not sure how much more pressure we could have withstood holding second pair. Another pot comes towards us. Nothing too glamorous is happening. We're getting the job done today nonetheless. Just 7 minutes go by when we're dealt queen 10 of diamonds once again. We're in the hijack and raised to 30. The big blind's the only caller. He likes to get involved but isn't having a great day so far. We're heads up in position. The flop comes jack 8 deuce rainbow. We've got a gutter, 1 over, and a backdoor flush draw. The opponent checks. I know this guy likes to call, so I'm tempted to check back rather than bluff. Since I also know that the big blind doesn't check raise often, I bet 40 anyway. It's unlikely that it'll cost me any additional money to see the next card, and this gives me the chance to maybe win right now, or at least keep control of the pot. Plus, if we hit, the pot will be larger for us, making it easier to stack the opponent down the line. Somewhat as expected, the big blind calls. The turn is the 9 of spades, giving us the absolute nuts. I'm glad we didn't check back the flop. The big blind checks. I don't get the sense that he's strong, but as mentioned previously, we know he likes calling. I'm trying to determine what sizing to make our bet. Ultimately, I choose 90. 100 seemed slightly too large. The big blind doesn't appreciate facing the bet. I see the urge he has to stick around though. The dude hates folding. He cuts out 90. I begin getting excited, thinking that we could be playing for all of it on the river because he doesn't have that much left. Then the big blind breaks my heart into tiny pieces and stomps on him before folding. Good fold. Despite stomping on the pieces of my heart, the opponent is a nice guy. We show him that he made the correct laydown. It's disappointing that we weren't able to drive that one home when it looked like the big blind was right about to call us. Oh well. That caps off the session for us. We book a solid come from behind win. I played for 4 hours, I won 275, and it's very windy outside, so that's why I'm doing this from my car. But you know, I didn't get in too many huge hands, but I was really happy with myself for just staying disciplined and making some folds that maybe I wouldn't have made in the past. I had that backdoor full house, and I stacked that one guy who had the pocket sixes, and then I made that straight at the end. I thought that was a really good spot, and against that particular opponent, I thought he was maybe going to pay me off, but didn't quite work out. Still happy overall with the session.
That's it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like and subscribe buttons because it helps out the channel a ton. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to let me know in the comment section. I'm happy to get back to you. This session, you know, it wasn't the most exciting. There weren't like a ton of massive all-ins or anything like that, but it's just kind of, you know, an everyday session. Played a couple of pots that were several $100s and didn't make a ton of big hands, but those are kind of the sessions that you have if you're going to play poker for a living. A few sessions coming up, a few vlogs coming up are going to be really, really cool. I'm here at the lodge right now. I've had some awesome stream sessions, and I went to Choctaw with World Poker Tour, so very excited to get those out. And we've got that meetup again June 4th and June 5th at the Hustler in Los Angeles. Hope to see you guys out there. Hope you're doing well. Stay safe. Good luck at the tables, and I'll see you next time.